Okay, so look, thank you all for coming. This is great. I really appreciate you being here today. And I'm Judy Mayfield, and I'm the president of ARQRV. That is the Association of Residents of Queensland Retirement Villages. And I know that it's quite a difficult name at times, and we get called all sorts of things like RACQ or RSPCA, but it's the ARQ. So today I'll just be talking about the ARQ. So we were established in 1992, and we were set up by the then Minister for Consumer Affairs, because that's originally where retirement villages sat. And he suggested that residents needed a strong consumer voice. So we were established in 1992, and that's 29 years ago now. And we've been going strong ever since. So we're continued on with our focus of consumer protection and advocacy and support for people living in a retirement village. So we're an incorporated association, not for profit. We're a registered charity, and the committee is run by residents, and all the members of the committee are actually residents in a retirement village. So we live in retirement villages across really the Brisbane area. The volunteer committee is elected every year, and any member of ARQ is able to stand as a committee member. And a plug for the committee: anytime anybody's thinking that they'd like to be part of the committee, you know, we really welcome residents, new members onto our committee. And one of the things that happened for us in COVID was that we started to use video conference calls. So we now have committee members who are not able to be present at the committee meetings, but they join us through video conferencing. And that's opened up an opportunity for people who don't live in Brisbane to be part of our committee. So the volunteer committee meet monthly in Brisbane, except, as I said, now that we've got Zoom, we meet face-to-face every quarter, and in between we have Zoom meetings. We've got over 6,000 members in Queensland in 150 retirement villages. We don't have as many members as we like, because there's now over 325 retirement villages in Queensland, and we only have members in about 150 of them. We don't get any funding from government. We operate entirely on our membership fees. You may remember 3 years ago we got some funding from government to do a particular project, and one was to introduce the amendments to the Act. So, but that's not ongoing funding, that was just project money. We run from a serviced office in Brendale, so it's in quite an industrial area of Brendale, and our office is at the back of the big warehouse, and we have 2 part-time admin assistants who work from that office. And we have the database, all the administration functions are run from the office, and the committee do their work from home. So I have the phone, the inquiries phone, and I just deal with phone calls from home. Mike, our vice president, who deals mainly with disputes, he just works from home and goes and visits villages where there are a dispute. So that's really about who we are, ARQ. But what I thought I'd really like to do was just talk a little bit about the retirement community, because I know that a lot of people are not always clear about what a retirement village is and what other differences there are in a retirement village. So when you buy into a retirement village, and I think you're a leasehold community, so you don't actually buy your unit. You sign a lease for 99 years, and that lease is actually registered with the Titles Office. So if you look at the Titles Office, that your deed is registered in that on that document. And you also, so you have a lease on the land, and you also lease the building that you live in, 2 separate leases. And the building that you lease, the villa, your accommodation unit, you have given the operator an ingoing contribution for that villa. And it's an interest-free loan. Now, when you say it coldly like that, it sounds really, difficult. Why am I giving these people an interest-free loan to live in a house that I don't own? But I guess that a retirement village is much more than just your accommodation unit. You get the facilities of the village, and you get the community, you get the friendships, the support, and the security of living in a village setting. When you leave, so that's what you pay when you come in, that's the ingoing contribution. When you leave the village, depending on what your contract actually says, you will pay a deferred management fee or an exit fee. And your contract will tell you how much you pay. Most contracts have a percentage, so 5% per annum, capped at 7 years. Some have got 7%, capped at 5 years. Normally your exit entitlement or your deferred management fee is about 30% of the price of the villa. Sometimes you pay that 30% on your ingoing contribution. Sometimes you pay it on the selling price of your unit. And that all depends. I don't know what that is in this village. It depends on what your contract says. And every village will have a different contract that will tell them how they pay that deferred management fee. Your contract is a legal document and you can't alter it. You have signed it when you've come in, and I know that people have come to me and said, look, I don't like my contract, I'd like to change it. That's not possible. It was a legal document and you are bound by that contract. The operator also is bound by the contract. If the operator wants to change it, they have to negotiate with all residents to change that contract. And sometimes operators do that if they feel that they can perhaps offer residents a better deal. They may go and say, look, we found we can do this. We'd like to change your contract, but you all have to agree to the change. The operator can't just change the contract. So operators make their money when you move into the village for the first time, and then they make their money when you move out of the village through the fees that you pay. While you're living in the village, your village budget actually dictates what your weekly fees will be. The operator cannot make any profit on your weekly fees. That's why it's really important that your residents committee have a look at the draft budget that your operator gives you every year, because the draft budget is worked out on the costs to run the village, and then those costs are divided by the number of units, accommodation units in the village, and that's the amount that you pay in your weekly fees. And the operator is not allowed to increase fees above CPI for many of the line items within your budget. However, there are some line items that the operator has no control over, and they may well be increased above CPI. A big one in the last couple of years has been insurances. So village insurance has increased quite significantly and might have increased your fees because of insurances. The other thing they have no control about is the award wages for the staff. So you will pay for the staff wages, and if Fair Work Australia puts those awards up, the operator has to abide by those awards unless they have a workplace agreement. Now there's also within the village, so you pay your fees every monthly, quarterly, I don't know how you pay them, weekly here. A small percentage of those fees that you pay are actually for the Maintenance Reserve Fund. So an amount of money from your fees goes to the Maintenance Reserve Fund, and that does the maintenance that needs to happen around the village. So the operator will provide you with the facilities, but you have to pay for the maintenance of those facilities. So the painting of inside here, the buses that need to be done, the gardeners, the gardens, the mulch, all of that, you're paying for out of the Maintenance Reserve Fund in your fees every week. So that's called, you'll see it in your budgets, it's referred to sometimes as the MRF. Usually the MRF doesn't pay, that fund doesn't pay for maintenance of your villas. Your contract will tell you what the operator will maintain in your village, in your own villa, and you need to read whatever is written in your contract about that. In my contract, in my village, I pay for most things, and there's a clause that says maintain, repair and replace for a lot of things in my villa. So some of the replacements are not even done by the operator. But again, read your contract, because that will tell you what you are responsible for in your villa. Then the other fund in the village is the Capital Replacement Fund. That's the CRF. When you come into a village and you buy in for the first time, an amount, a percentage of your buy-in price is put into the Capital Replacement Fund, the CRF, to build the capital and to replace capital. The only other money that goes into that Capital Replacement Fund is from the operator. And it's the operator's responsibility to make sure that there's enough money in that CRF to maintain or to build new capital items, to replace the capital items in this village. So if you need a new bus, it comes from the Capital Replacement Fund. The running and the maintenance of the bus you pay for from the Maintenance Reserve Fund. So very distinct categories of capital replacement and maintenance reserve. The Retirement Village Act governs how a village is operated. And interestingly, the Retirement Village has just made some amendments to the Act, and they're demanding that the operators provide more transparency on the Maintenance Reserve Fund and on the Capital Replacement Fund. And once these final amendments are passed, they're in the consultation stage at the moment. If they get passed as they have been drafted, your operator will have to be much more transparent. And for those of you who have been on the Residents Committee or are on the Residents Committee at the moment, you will have much more information about what the expenditure is in the Maintenance Reserve Fund, so you will know exactly where your money's going. No longer can operators just say head office expenses or admin charges. They actually have to break it down to give you a full breakdown of what is in those, what they're spending that money on. And that is going to make a huge difference for residents' committees to be able to understand what's going on with the money. Because as a residents' committee and as residents, you can query the budget that the operator hands down every year. Once that legislation has been, then the amendments have been passed, we will actually be doing another segment that will belong to this video segment around the new financial amendments. So that will form part of this video series as well. So that's the other part of people sometimes get mixed up, is the over 55s resorts, and you've got a few here in Bargara. They come under a different Act of Parliament. They don't sit under the Retirement Villages Act. they sit under the manufactured homes and residential parks. So that grew up out of the caravan parks that started to put those little, cabiny things in it, and people live in there, and it's now seniors living in many instances. That comes under a total different legislation, and a totally different financial structure. So, people often don't know, and certainly when I moved into my village, I had no idea there was a difference between an over 55s resort and a retirement village, but that is how it is, and you need to understand that there is a difference. So people who live in an over 55s resort will say, look, we don't pay deferred management fees, we don't pay them. But let me say, the operators know how to make their money. They're not taking any less money whether you pay an exit fee or whether you don't. They will still make their profit. So I think at the end of the day, if you looked at it, there was probably not a lot in it, except that the Retirement Villages Act gives you more protection than the Manufactured Homes Act. So what do? We're about advocacy and support. And there's a lot of things that we do directly with residents, and there's a lot of things that we do that many of our members actually don't know that we do because it's done in the background. So we are now very well regarded by government. So if government wants to know anything about what residents are doing or thinking, they will come to us and say, what's the feeling of residents? So every now and then we send out surveys for you to complete, or we send them out to the residents' committees to just get a feel of what is actually happening out there in the villages, because government is using that to build in a lot more supports into the Act to support residents, because at one stage the Act was very geared towards the operators, and there has been a big move in the last little while for government to try and address the imbalance. So we work very closely, and they've just changed departments now. The Retirement Villages now falls under the Department of Communities, Housing and Digital Economy. Not quite sure where that comes in, but that's where we now sit. And I've just received, I meet with them regularly with the department. They keep us up to date on their thinking. When we write anything for residents, you might have seen the Residents' Committee Manual that we published last year. That all gets run past the department first to make sure that we haven't said anything in that's contrary to the Act. So they proofread all of our documents that go out to make sure they're in line with the Act, and then they ask us for input for anything that they're doing. And I also sit on or I did when we had the last minister. The new minister hasn't called that yet, but I sat on the Community Housing Task Force, and that was chaired by Minister de Brenny at that time. So they are now very, they just include ARQRV regularly in any consultation that they do around seniors housing, which means that we really are becoming the voice of residents. And we also work with the operators. So we work with the peak body for operators. Now, there are two major peak bodies for operators. One is the Property Council, and that includes all the big developers. And within the Property Council is the Retirement Living Council, and there are all the developers of the larger developments. So Stockland, Aveo, Retire Australia, they all sit under in the Retirement Living Council. And then we have LASA, the Leading Age Services Australia. They pick up a lot of the aged care, as well as the smaller retirement villages operators, the charity and the not-for-profits sit in LASA, and I work closely with both of those organisations as well. In fact, just before I came out here, I was on the judging panel for the Village Manager of the Year for LASA, and the Retirement Living Council always have me speak at their big annual national summit. I say something, and usually something controversial to the operators, because it's a chance to talk to all of them. So I tell them all off when I get a chance to talk. There actually is a state residents association in every state across Australia. So we presidents get together and we always meet at the Retirement Living Council. They pay for us to go to their conference and support us that way. And look, people sort of say, well, why are you working with the operators? What are you doing that for? And we're doing that because we have to have a sustainable industry. We can't. This is where our money is. You know, all our money is invested in our villas and our accommodation units. And we can't afford to have that industry fall over because, you know, or go into receivership and so on. We need to make sure that we work together to keep the industry strong. And in doing that, in working, and also the industry body also, we will run things past them. Would you believe that ARQ actually wrote a book for village managers called Guide for Village Managers when Working with a Residents Committee? Industry looked at that, and they are actually promoting that to village managers, and we sell that we don't, the information that we print out for residents is quite reasonable in price. We just cover our costs. But we've made the industry pay for the work that we've done. And I'm really happy to say that a lot of the big operators now are using that guide for working with residents committees, which is just really good to see that they also are acknowledging the work that we do. You also may remember on our website we've got a document entitled Classification of Expenditure, which residents committees use and which operators use as well. And industry has just redone that guide. It did need updating, and we were aware it needed updating, but you know, it was another large undertaking, and we were wanting to finish other things first. But industry has updated it and now sent it to us and said, look, feedback, what do you think about this? Can we agree? So that when we're deciding about expenditure, and we're going to go into a dispute about expenditure, let's at least be talking off the same page about what the expenditure and where it should be, where it falls on residents or to the operator. So that's our work with industry and government. But then we also work closely with residents who have any sort of dispute with the operator. So if you have a problem, normally we suggest you try and deal, the individual resident tries to deal with it with their manager, the village manager, in the first instance. The next step is, if they can't get any satisfaction with dealing it with the village manager, they can then go to the residents committee, depending on the residents committee. Some residents committee are happy to then make broader representation to the manager, but some are not interested, and that's fine. Each residents committee can decide what they're going to do. But if you can't get any further than that, then contact the ARQRV and we will intervene on your behalf. So that's the big picture of what we do in terms of how we deal with conflicts. So we try to resolve the disputes that you may have, and we try to negotiate through those disputes rather than go to QCAT. But we can go to QCAT, that's to the tribunal, to try and mediate and get a ruling made. And many years ago, we actually pursued it even further than that and actually challenged the operators in the High Court. So we will go all the way if we think it's a really important issue. But I think that with the amendments to the Act, the operators, the government has now addressed many of the big issues that we had concerns about. We publish, for members, we publish 4 newsletters a year. We used to publish just print letters, but the postage has made it really difficult for us to, to do just print newsletters. It costs us over $7,000 to post out newsletters. So where we can now, we are sending them out by email. Although we know that some people, and they can contact us and say, look, I would prefer a print version. So we will send out a print version to people who don't have an email address or would prefer print. We provide ongoing information in our newsletters about issues significant to a retirement village lifestyle. So we addressed some time ago last year the whole issue about embedded electricity networks in villages. I don't know if you can have your own power supply here. If you can't, you buy your power supply from your operator. Is that what you do here? You have your own. Okay, in some, the operator buys it wholesale and then sells it back to you. They are supposed to do that in ways that they don't make a profit, but, it's often difficult to see that. We recently redeveloped our website, and if you use a computer at all, I do recommend that you look at our website, because there's lots of interesting articles that, when we've done surveys or interesting articles or issues that we've dealt with in villages. I can think of one that's really contentious and still comes up is dogs in retirement villages. That's just an issue. And so there's an article on the website about dogs in villages. So lots of interesting articles that you will find there. And whereas, you might phone up and we'll give you some information over the phone, sometimes it's just as easy to go to our website because there's a lot more information. And we make sure that website is up to date. There's also links on that website to a copy of the actual Retirement Villages Act. So if you want to read the actual Act, it's on the website. And also links to some legal services and so on. So really worth getting to just know what's on that website. And in each village, we do encourage a village to appoint a membership support officer, an MSO. And in your village, it's Anne. And the MSO really just, when new people move into a village, their role is to just make sure that the new people know what ARQRV are or does and how we can support them. So we have about 85 MSOs currently. So we don't have an MSO in every village that we have members. But often we can send, they don't want to be known officially as an MSO, but we will send a member some brochures and ask them to put it up in the library or to have it available for people to get access to that information. We're just starting something that I'm hoping we'll be able to do fairly regularly with our MSOs, and that's to meet with them via a Zoom video conferencing meeting. And we're really grateful. We really appreciate the work that the MSOs do, because it does help us to get the word out there, particularly in the regional areas. And I guess this is what this video is about. How do we get the word out there? Because it is expensive for us to travel to the villages, getting up there and then the accommodation and so on. So this is a way that we're hoping that we'll be able to get this information out there. So how do we actually add value to your lifestyle? So what is the benefit of being a member of ARQRV? And that's often what people say, what's the benefit? They realise the benefit often when they phone us and I say, I'm sorry you're not a member, I can't help you. And then they say, oh, but well, if I join now, can I get the information? I say, no. we'll give you, I mean, your membership is not a lot of money, so we'll give you a little bit of advice if you join now, but we certainly won't support you to the level that we would support people who are members and have been members for a long time. Because we do rely on membership fees to run the office and so on. But we will write, if you have an issue, we can write on your behalf to the village manager. The benefit also of ARQ being involved with operators is whilst we don't know the village manager, we know a lot of the CEOs of the organisation, because that's the people who come to the Property Council, the RLC meetings or the LASA meetings. So if they're not the CEOs, they're somebody fairly high up in the organisation. And I make it my business to make sure I know as many of them as I can. And so if we can't get past the village manager, we actually just escalate it up further up the chain, up the organisation, to get some results done. So we'll also support a member with general advice, and if we don't know the answer, or it's above, you know, it's more legal, then we have the expertise to be able to deal with. We have a solicitor who is the ARQ solicitor, and you would find his name. He's always in the newsletters, David Wise. So he will act for us. He doesn't, and we still have to pay him for his advice. And so we'll get advice from David if it becomes something that we just need to have a legal understanding about. Unfortunately, the legal system isn't that crash hot either, as if you didn't know. The operators will consult with their legal people and get different advice to what our legal people are saying. So our legal people talk to their legal people and we try and resolve it. So again, if I can't resolve it, then I just say I just call the department in and I say, we can't get this resolved. Could you give us, you know, you're the people who wrote the Act. Could you interpret it for us? And then they go to their legal people and ask. So we do get it resolved in the end, but you know, if we've got concerns, we can just go straight to the department. And we have intervened or asked the department to intervene at times when we believe that the way the operator is behaving is just beyond anything that ARQ can do legally as well. So we will just report them to the department, and the department will then often go in to that village to have a look and see what's actually going on. And we have had a couple of operators sell out after our intervention because they were really just being quite horrible to residents, bullying and harassing and, you know, not dealing in line with the Act at all. So we can do that if we need to. We will also review a village budget. If you're unsure about your village budget, we will assist you to look and see if your budget is compliant. We haven't got any right to intervene with your village budget, but we can certainly suggest the questions that you should be asking. And hopefully, if you haven't looked, for those of you who are involved with your residence committee, we have just republished on the website village financials, the village financial document, and there's everything that a committee needs to know about dealing with village financials, with examples and so on. So we've put it into this new document. Now this document may need to be changed if these new amendments go through. There may be something that we just need to tweak, but we knew about the amendments that were coming in, so that's actually in that new document. So certainly read that if you want to understand village financials. And I have to say, I'm not a great person on understanding finances. Honestly, our treasurers deal with all the financial issues. But I got a better understanding of village financials after I've read that document. And I could actually read it and understand it, because I really don't like figures. So I did find it not too bad to read. We will also review the exit entitlement letter. So when you want to leave your village, either you or your family will get a letter which will say what your exit entitlements are. And so we will have a look at that and make suggestions if we think again that the operators are overcharging. So we will actually work with families. So once you have left the village either to go into a nursing home and you want to sell your accommodation unit, or you have died, if you are a member, we will continue to work with your family until those exit entitlements have been resolved and they are well onto the road to selling the unit. And so we work a lot with family members who come to us and say, you know, Mum or Dad told us we had to talk to you before we did anything with this. So if you are a member, we suggest you put your ARQRV information with your will, so that the family do know, or tell the family that they can contact us. Again, this is where we run into trouble. I guess people don't become members, and the families who are probably more, younger people more switched on to using social media, have seen ARQ on social media and then come to us and say, can you help us? We're, you know, Mum's just died and we don't know what to do. And my first question is, was Mum a member? No, she wasn't. No, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Well, can I become a member? No, I'm sorry, just go and get some legal advice. I can't help you. So that's one of the real great benefits, is that family intervention as time goes on in dealing with the operators. We'll also provide general advice to people thinking about moving into a village. So there is a section on our website entitled Thinking About Moving In, and people can join up as an associate member when they are thinking about moving in, and we will assist them. Obviously, we can't tell them what village to move into, but we can certainly tell them the sorts of things to ask and the questions they need to consider, and the fact that they need to talk to some residents and not just take the word of the salespeople, but try and talk to some residents in the village as well. And once they move into a village, that associate membership is just turned into a full membership. We will not get involved, though, in disputes between residents, so we just steer clear of that. And that's because, well, say you're both the residents are members of ARQ, and you both come to us with the same dispute with your neighbour, you know, so we just say, no, I'm sorry, we can't. Maybe your village manager will help you, and that's often difficult as well. I mean, yeah, because it becomes he said, she said, unless it's something really black and white. And the other way is to go to the neighbourhood centres, you know, neighbourhood legal centres, and speak. And you can get free legal advice, usually at the neighbourhood legal centres, community legal centres. A first appointment is always free if you want to look get some advice. But look, it's no different to the fight you'd have with your neighbour in the street. You know, really, if you lived in the suburbs, you know, fences, dogs, noise, smoke, you know. So we can't help, so we just won't. So all of those are the things that we will actually do to assist. So those are some of the benefits of your membership that is there available to you. So those are one of the ways that we can support you. So in order to become a member, there are actually 3 classes of membership. So there's just the ordinary member, ordinary annual member. So when you first join as a new member, you pay $57. That's $35 annual membership fee and $22 to join. And then renewals are due on the 1st of March each year, and currently renewals are $35 per annum. From time to time, that fee goes up, but that has to go. The committee can't just decide to put the fees up. That actually has to go to our AGM, and there has to be a vote by all members to support an increase in fees. The last time our fees were increased, we actually hadn't realised that we have to pay GST on the fees. And so we put the fees up to cover the GST. At this point in time, unless something unforeseen happens, we're not putting those fees up. However, people must pay by the end of March. Otherwise, you have to then pay a joining fee to start again, to rejoin. Then we have a life membership, and that's $300 for life. And you don't pay annual fees, obviously, if you become a life member. Life membership, depending on how long you anticipate living, life membership is a different option. I had a 90-year-old who wanted to join as a life member, and I said, you can just join as an annual. And he said, no, I'm going to join for life. Great. And then we have an associate member. That's for people who are considering moving in to a village, or if you have family members who don't necessarily live close to you, they can join as an associate member, which means we send them newsletters and also send them any information. And those are family members who perhaps they don't think that, mum's reading everything she should be reading in the newsletter, or dad's not reading, they're not paying attention to what's happening because, things are put in the newsletter. And if a family member does phone, I'll say, we only wrote about that last month or something. So family members can become associate members, and that means they can also phone us up if they've got an issue with perhaps wanting to understand what mum and dad is happening in the village for mum and dad, and they will get all the newsletters, so they can also come and ask us. So that's the same fees as for an ordinary member. The majority of people seem to join as life members, but really it doesn't matter to us which way. And you can pay your fees either by direct bank transfer or with a credit card over the phone to the office. Just a word of warning, please, if you do it through the bank account, please put a name and some contact details, because sometimes we just get money that says deposit. And we have no idea who that money is coming from. So we have to then, and if they're a new member, if we just get something that's marked deposit for $57, we know they're a new member, but how on earth do we trace new members? We often use our MSOs and say, have you got somebody called this living in your village? But if they're not in a village where we've got an MSO, we don't have a lot of chance of finding that. We get it when they're irate because they haven't received a receipt or any acknowledgement that they've joined.
A lot of associations have that problem.
Yes. And then just finally to wrap up, I just want to, which is really not ARQRV business, but I really just want to tell you, to remind you really about My Aged Care. Because when you are living in your accommodation unit and when things become too difficult for you to do in your unit, you can get assistance from My Aged Care. So contact My Aged Care, get registered with My Aged Care, and then tell them what you need. So my husband's mobility is much reduced. So we get My Aged Care, so I get some domestic help with My Aged Care, And we also get home maintenance through My Aged Care, which is just brilliant because they come and clean our windows for us. And they climb up and clean the ceiling fans, and they wash down. We got a lot of mud wasps. You probably don't have the problem here, but I've got lots of mud wasps in my villa because I'm on the outside where the golf course is. So they come down and wash the mud wasps off the walls for me. They wash on top of cupboards that I can't reach. So they do all those sorts of home maintenance. They will do gardening. They will trim back your trees. If you're responsible for your back garden, they will come and assist with that. So, but you must get registered with My Aged Care to assess that. And then my husband also gets exercise physiology. So he has a one-on-one session in a rehab gym every week with an exercise physiologist. So be aware, and I would also suggest that you register sooner rather than later, because I know that down in where I live, around Caboolture area, at the moment all the organisations that offer care, offer domestic or maintenance, their books are full and they've got no more funding to provide any more supports. And so we've got people in our village who would desperately need it because of health issues, and they are just waiting for a agency like Blue Care or Anglicare or ARQRV or whatever the cares are around here. They do have to get money to be able to, from government, to provide the service. So don't leave it too late. Get registered sooner rather than later.